Hello and a warm welcome to our live event today with myself, Ashok Gupta. I'm the founder and CEO of the Gupta program. And we're very pleased to announce today the publication of a new independent clinical audit on the Gupta program patients. And this audit has just recently been published. It's a non-controlled trial, but it's a very intriguing paper because previously we've had randomized controlled trials published on ME and chronic fatigue syndrome, also on fibromyalgia and long COVID. And for those patients, they've had that evidence base to support the work that they're doing with us. But this particular clinical audit looked at our patients across a broad spectrum of different conditions, across 16 different conditions, and found that for 14 of them, there were significant improvements, medium to large effect sizes in terms of their health and functioning. And so it's a very exciting time to have this type of preliminary research to show that neuroplasticity and brain retraining can be effective for a number of different conditions that traditionally we may not have thought of as, fitting under this category of neuroplasticity. So what exactly does it say in this independent study? It shows that after 3 months of using the Gupta program across a range of different conditions, there was approximately between a 50 to 116% improvement in health and functioning. And obviously we are a 6-month program, and to have those levels of improvement after 3 months is great. And what matters to us is not quick wins, but actually the sustained improvement. And within the study, it does show that the longer people use the program, the better the benefits that they actually receive. And of course, just cautioning that this is a smaller scale study. So for some of the N sizes, so the number of patients, this was a study of, I think, around 300 to 400 patients. But in each category, bearing in mind there's 16 different conditions, some of them mainly had about 30 patients, some of them had 50, 60 patients, some of them had over 100 patients. But this is still preliminary research, and we need to do further research with larger scale randomized controlled trials. Nevertheless, it does open up new avenues for research for both and support for practitioners and patients. So what I wanted to do was just share some of the key ideas from this particular study. So you can find this study on the NIH website. It's in the National Library of Medicine. And this is the particular study here. So our team can share a direct link. As I said, it's on the NIH website. It's been published in the Integrative Medicine Clinicians Journal. And there we are. There's the title: Neuroplasticity Intervention, Amygdala and Insular Retraining significantly improves overall health and functioning across various chronic conditions. And in terms of the key results, so we've summarized the key results for you so that you can take a look at them here. And this is on our website at guptaprogram.com/research. So you can see just after 3 months, those are some of the N sizes and then the percentage improvement in people's conditions. And you can see a broad spectrum of different conditions that you may not place under the same umbrella, like long COVID, food sensitivities, burnout, mast cell activation, SIBO, etc. And some of the larger effect sizes, interestingly, amongst patients with long COVID, but also Lyme. So the largest effect was actually with Lyme patients. And you can read more about that, once again, at guptaprogram.com/research. Okay. And what's really interesting for this is we think of these different conditions as separate, as I've mentioned. So chronic fatigue over here, Lyme disease over here. And we often look at these conditions by the cluster of symptoms that patients are experiencing. And we here at the Gupta program actually have another way of looking at this, which is that, yes, the cluster of symptoms that people may have may be different. But what we do notice is that there's many crossovers between the symptomatology across these different conditions. And we believe this is because at the underlying root cause, when we go further upstream, they may have a similar root. So just like a tree can have different branches, and in fact, we talk about different branches of medicine, don't we? And so we may have different illnesses amongst those different branches, but actually they all form the same or come from the same trunk and the same roots, which we believe comes under the category of NICS, Neuroimmune Conditioned Syndromes. So neuro, because it involves the nervous system, our electrical system, that's almost the information system that tells the cells and organs what to do. Immune, because we know that across these conditions, there tends to be either overinflammation or indeed autoimmune effects, where the inflammatory effects are then affecting our own cells in a negative way. Conditions, because we think that at the root cause, many of these conditions may be caused by learning effects in the brain. So rather than thinking that somehow the brain has, or the body has randomly started this inflammatory response, or it's responding appropriately to the factors affecting it, such as mold or opportunistic Lyme infection, could it be in fact that the brain has learnt to over-respond, to over-defend as an evolutionary, biological imperative, in fact, an opportunity to ensure survival? So the brain has learned to over-respond, which unfortunately then causes lots of downstream effects that are negative. Because we often say the brain cares more about your survival than it does your wellness. So coming back to those four words, neuroimmune conditions and then syndromes. Syndromes in the sense that there's a unique cluster of symptoms for each patient according to various factors. So you may ask the question, well, why is it that someone has flu and then they may go on to getting chronic fatigue, but someone else doesn't? Or why is it that perhaps someone goes on to getting a mold illness versus having SIBO, or or maybe there's crossovers? What determines what condition somebody gets? And why do people often get more than one condition or more than one cluster of symptoms? Well, we believe that, or in our hypothesis, we postulate that this could be down to two factors. Number one, this could be the genetic, I suppose, vulnerabilities that a particular patient has. Yeah. So someone may, from a genetic perspective, from an upbringing perspective, have more of a vulnerability in their nervous system, their immune system, or their defensive systems that makes them more prone perhaps to getting gut issues or gut dysbiosis, or having more pain issues in the body. But secondly, and more importantly, the reason that someone might get a particular type of symptom, it depends on the original factor. So if in someone's condition, the original factor was a mold exposure or a COVID exposure, then obviously that will then determine the pattern of symptoms that then results in terms of their neuroimmune conditioned syndrome that they then experience, and the cluster of symptoms that they have. And this is related to different clusters of illnesses. So for instance, we have neuroimmune conditions, which we traditionally might think of as long COVID, chronic fatigue, fibromyalgia, and related to that, pain syndrome. So unexplained pain, fibromyalgia type pain. Yeah. And we believe that this type of hypothesis also explains why pain networks become hypersensitized. Then sensitivity reactions like the mold illness, electrical sensitivities, multiple chemical sensitivities. That's another grouping of neuroimmune condition syndromes. And then we've also had anecdotal evidence that people are finding benefit with conditions even like Alzheimer's and MS, these kind of autoimmune or degenerative diseases, with once again, the immune system is triggered unnecessarily and is attacking our own cells, or even our own brain cells, or cells within the brain stem, or the other parts of our bodies. And so this asks, or brings us to the question, what is this underlying cause? Why is the brain causing such a large number of modern diseases that traditional medicine may find tricky to treat? And I believe that the answer lies in this idea that we are now bombarded with so many more insults than perhaps we were in previous generations. And this also backs up some of the randomized control data that we've had. So we've had several randomized control trials published. So one being, or a couple of recent ones, one was on fibromyalgia. And that also showed that with the Gupta program, compared to a control group, patients had a 37% reduction in fibro scores after 8 weeks, but 0 in the control group. They had a halving of pain, a 50% increase in functional capacity, and a halving of anxiety and depression, and very low responses in the control group. And similarly with long COVID, we had a randomized control trial published last year, which showed that the Gupta program, compared to a wellness program, which included diet, sleep, exercise, supplements, compared to that wellness program, the Gupta program was 4 times more effective at reducing fatigue and exhaustion, and twice as effective at increasing levels of energy. And once again, that's a published study, a randomized control study that you can take a look at. So we're seeing this buildup of evidence that these types of neuroplasticity, brain retraining types approaches can be effective for these illnesses. And once again, going back to our question, why would that be? Why would it be that these illnesses are increasing in the population? And why would it be that neuroplasticity could be potentially the answer? Well, let me share with you some of the hypothesis, and that might help us understand this at a deeper level. So in this diagram, we can see that at the top of the diagram, we have precipitating factors for these neuroimmune diseases. So at number one, we have genetic predisposition, as we've talked about. But number two is really fascinating. In our modern lifestyle, we're not living according to our genetic inheritance. So there may be lifestyle factors. So that may be smoking, alcohol, obesity, our diets, etc., that could be impacting on our capacity to handle stress. There could be psychosocial factors. So this includes our levels of stress, our relationships, our work environments, but particularly those who've experienced adverse childhood experiences or past trauma. And we know that people who've experienced trauma in their past may be 3 to 4 times more likely to develop one of these neuroimmune type diseases. And thirdly, then environmental influences. So that's the toxins that we may have in our diets, in household cleaning products, pollution around us, which can all influence our capacity to handle the stress, the mental, emotional, and physical stress that our body is placed under. And of course, at number 3, the acute traumatic assault. And that can be, once again, in the pure neuroimmune conditions, a virus or bacterial infection. In the case of sensitivity reactions, that might be exposure to mold or exposure to some kinds of chemical, which then causes this maladaptation in the brain. And we believe that core conditioning, certainly from animal studies, may be in the amygdala and insula part of the brain. Then at number 4, that then triggers this chronic sympathetic arousal. So the stress system, the fight or flight or freeze system starts getting hyper aroused, and even aspects of the parasympathetic system, the freeze response, may also simultaneously be aroused, which causes us to freeze and causes our muscles to tense up. We then may have immune dysfunction on the right-hand side, hypothalamus, pituitary, adrenal axis abnormalities, and oxidative stress, which then causes the symptoms at number 6. And these are the crossover symptoms. So we know we have lots of fatigue, exhaustion, muscle dysfunction and pain, cognitive difficulties, issues with sleep, autonomic dysfunction. And a very unique symptom to a lot of these diseases is post-exertional malaise, where people exercise or do activity and they feel a lot worse. Yeah? And so just staying at number 6 for the moment, the reason this is relevant for this new study, where we've shown that neuroplasticity could be really promising for many different diseases, is because we often categorize these diseases at number 6 in terms of the clusters that are apparent. But actually, if we go further upstream to number 4 in the diagram, we can realize that maybe at the same root, the root of the tree, it's down to maladaptive neuroimmune responses in the brain. And this offers a seductive opportunity for medicine to say, actually, if we could understand that at a much deeper level, perhaps we could heal a whole range of different modern diseases through the power of the brain, through brain retraining, through neuroplasticity. Yeah, it holds such promise. Yeah. And we're already seeing this in many different pain diseases or pain abnormalities. And could this be true now for neuroimmune and autoimmune diseases and even degenerative diseases? Could we find that master switch to switch off autoimmune diseases, neurodegenerative diseases, and therefore bring people back to functioning? How exciting that could be. So in this diagram, just to finish off, we then also have secondary diseases that you can see at the bottom of the diagram, which may include the mitochondrial dysfunction. So we know there's a cell danger response that we notice at the more microscopic level within the cells. There could be latent virus reactivations, that's people experiencing allergies and sensitivities, which once again contribute to those symptoms at number 6. And what's interesting, there has to be a perpetuating factor that keeps us in the cycle of chronic illness. So we often feel that the brain then detects these symptoms at number 8. So these symptoms are magnified. Yeah, certainly we know this in pain research within the insula and the amygdala, which then causes these symptoms to loop back to a hypervigilant brain at number 9, and then keeps the chronic cycle of disease going. And you'll see on the right-hand side of the screen, we talk about external stress, where actually, if there are continuing bouts of that assault, so are we still exposed to Lyme and mold? Are we still exposed to stress? Are we still exposed to other infections? That then may exacerbate the situation at number 5, reinforcing the vicious cycle. So this helps us understand why it could be that many different diseases, such as even SIBO, for instance, could be down to this cycle, which may have been triggered by potentially food poisoning or a particular infection, could then cause chronic illness within the number 6, the gut, which then interacts, and we know about the gut-brain axis and how the gut interacts with the brain, and there are constant messages being sent that can fuel this type of vicious cycle. So that's another type of cycle that may occur. Then in the situation of Lyme disease, for instance, it may well be that someone is exposed to a tick bite, they have the Lyme infection. Yeah? And if there's a maladaptation in the brain in terms of this immune response, then ironically, the immune system may overstimulate itself, which means that then there's this over-inflammatory response, and opportunistic infections can then gather roots in the body. And detoxification systems can also shut down, which can keep this loop going. And if we fix it at the roots, then the body is itself its own best detoxifier, its own best arsenal against opportunistic infections, viruses, and bacterial infections. Okay, so correcting it at number 4 could then heal a lot of these secondary illness cycles and also the symptoms, which we believe are downstream. And a lot of modern medicine, when it comes to these types of diseases, looks at how we can treat it at the more reductionist level, down at number 6 and number 7. And of course, many patients do heal and recover from those approaches. But we believe that that might be because it slows down the vicious cycle. So if we're able to remedy at number 6 and number 7 some of those downstream symptoms, that can also heal or calm down the vicious cycle, which then automatically retrains the brain and someone goes back to health. But in a lot of cases, many practitioners tell us that a patient goes on to having this chronic vicious cycle because of so much stress in their lives. And even though they may heal, any stress seems to re-trigger a lot of symptoms and they have to start again with supplements and diet changes. And so we work with a lot of practitioners, in fact. So we work with a lot of these types of naturopaths and nutritionists, etc. And what we find is that we can work in complement with them. So as long as the patient is focused on the core hypothesis, then they can continue with their supplements and medications and also the other lifestyle factors that their practitioner may be involved in, and then simultaneously work with the Gupta program at the upstream level as well. And therefore, we now find that many naturopaths, nutritionists, practitioners are working with us side by side, and we hope to extend that type of model. So if you are a practitioner, please do get in touch with us and we can support you in how you can then support your clients. Okay. And in terms of the reason that we're presenting this particular research is because previously we only had research on ME and chronic fatigue syndrome, fibromyalgia, and long COVID. But now that we have this broader spectrum of different diseases, we hope that if you are someone who suffers from one of these conditions, or indeed you're already using the Gupta program, this can increase your sense of belief and faith in recovery, because now there is some objective scientific support. It's not absolute evidence, but it's certainly promising results that can support your sense of belief in your recovery. And often, as we talk about in the Gupta program, if we are too desperate to get better, that indicates a fear. And it's a fear that maybe we won't get better. But once we see this type of scientific research and evidence, it engenders a sense of trust and faith in your body's ability to heal. And that's really the hope that I want to give you with this type of research. And therefore, it enables you to engage with our program in a more relaxed way, less attached to results, but just that sense of trust that I am on the right road to healing, I can heal, and many before me have walked this path. So with this live event, wherever you're watching this, live on YouTube or Facebook, please do share this with focus groups, or sorry, rather support groups, with your friends, your family, or anyone else that you know who is suffering from these types of conditions, because we really want to get this type of information out there. And often with the Gupta program, you know, we've been around for 20, 25 years now. Well, in terms of the Gupta program itself, maybe about 15, 17 years. And people often only come to us when they've been through every other avenue possible and spent thousands, if not tens of thousands of dollars on many different routes to healing, and have come to us as a last resort. And they think, gosh, I wish we'd come to you earlier. So please do share this with others who may benefit from this. Yeah. And as you know, recently we partnered with Dr. Jeff Bland from PLMI, and he's known as almost the father of integrative and functional medicine. And we've partnered with him on a webinar, and he was certainly fascinated by our research and this new approach to these types of neuroimmune diseases. And it's so interesting because now a lot of integrative and functional medicine doctors as well, they tell us time and time again that we know that there is nervous system dysregulation in our patients. We know that this is impacting on their ability to have long-term good health, but we don't necessarily have the tools or support to be able to have patients go through some kind of regulation. And it's great working with these practitioners because we say that, look, we have the infrastructure to support your patients. So a patient can come to us, download the free app, start watching free videos and even some free live events. And if they choose to take the full program, our program involves videos. We have lots of audio sessions. We have live webinars every week. And of course, something which has been a real game changer for many of our patients is something called daily Gupticize, which are live Zoom calls with our lovely, friendly coaches who are able to take people through the nervous system regulation each day, and more importantly, the brain retraining. Because it's the regularity of brain retraining that makes our brain able to take on these new processes, this rewiring that's occurring in the brain. It relies on repetition. So daily engagement, we know, is really powerful with people for these types of conditions. Okay. Good. So in terms of future research, we have a research fund. It's called the Chronic Conditions Research Fund, CCRF. And it is we've already raised about $70,000, and our aim is to raise now about $500,000 for this type of research. So if you yourself would like to donate, or perhaps you know some high net worth individuals who perhaps like to try our program and would be interested in contributing to that fund, then please do get in touch with us, or you can go to our website at guptaprogram.com/donate. Because we feel that the traditional medical model doesn't support this type of research. It supports and is set up for pharmaceutical research. And yet in the last 20 to 30 years, I mean, I went to a chronic fatigue syndrome conference just last year in New York. And the head of that organization at that time actually said, look, in all the 20 to 30 years of research, we've not found a single pharmaceutical intervention that is shown to have consistent benefit. Yeah. And I believe that will be the same for long COVID. That will be the same for a lot of these different diseases. And therefore, because traditional research funding doesn't support this type of research, we have to go for more alternative sources. And so therefore, any investors or people who are interested in this type of research, if they'd like to donate, we think that there's a lot more research we can do, especially larger scale phase 2, phase 3 trials with thousands of patients. And when you get to that level, then you finally have not just promising results, but proof that this is really the first port of call for people with neuroimmune condition syndromes. So if there is anyone that you know, please do let us know. And finally, just like to say that if you'd like to come onto the Gupta program, please do search Gupta program on the App Store or Play Store. You can download the free app. You can take our daily sessions. And in our program, until we have the larger scale phase 3 trials, we offer a 1-year money back guarantee on our program. So you've got nothing to lose by giving it a go. And what makes us unique is the fact that there's a support system in place. So there's all the weekly webinars, there's the one-on-one sessions you can have with our practitioners, and of course the daily support, which is a real game changer for people who are isolated on their own trying to figure this out. Yeah. Good. So I really want to thank you for coming on to this live event. Once again, please do share this with friends and family and support groups who potentially could benefit from this knowledge and research. And we hope to share more research with you in the future. And of course, as I said, please keep believing. Please know that whatever condition you have, I truly believe that you are on the path to healing, whatever way you find is possible for you. So thank you so much for watching. Once again, if you want this particular access to this paper, you can go to our website at guptaprogram.com/research. And on that particular page, you'll be able to view this particular new medical study. And secondly, you'll also be able to view our randomized controlled trials, which are, once again, controlled trials. So there's a control group there as well, which is more a kind of deeper gold standard of evidence. So you'll be able to read those papers as well. And we hope to share more research with you in the future. So thank you for watching, and I look forward to seeing you on another live event. Thank you and goodbye.